The U.S. Defense Department is preparing a system for destroying Syria's chemical weapons stockpiles at sea. With the Syrian civil war still raging, destroying the weapons inside the country is just not an option.
So the job is going to the water, where a U.S. ship will use special equipment to neutralize Syria's sarin and mustard gas. VOA Pentagon correspondent Luis Ramirez went on board that ship, the Cape Ray, and talked about the plans with On Assignment's Doug Bernard.
Luis Ramirez, explain to us exactly how this is going to work.
Well, the U.S. has offered to provide a ship with 2 reactors on board. These are pieces of equipment that will essentially neutralize the Syrian chemical weapons and also the precursor chemicals.
We'll change them chemically into compounds that are no longer usable for that.
It will happen on the ship's cargo area inside this tent.
This will be the most potentially contaminated area. This is the hottest area for us.
Those who will operate the system say the process is safe, and they will see to it that no toxic waste ends up in the sea. The technology is not new. The U.S. has used it to destroy America's own chemical weapons. But this is the first time it will be done at sea.
Syria has agreed to deliver those chemical weapons to a port, one of its ports, Latakia, and then from there it'll be loaded onto some Scandinavian ships, taken to a third country where then these materials will be transferred onto the U.S. ship, which is the MV Cape Ray. The estimate is that this process should take about 45 days, although officials on board that ship last week told me that it's very likely to take longer than that.
It sounds like that there's a lot of transfer involved. It seems each one of those steps brings with it certain dangers.
The reason why it's being done this way is because it, believe it or not, is the fastest way. It avoids taking those chemicals onto any third country. All of the political and legal issues involved are avoided here. The toxic waste then delivered to a third country for disposal at a facility, much the way toxic waste is disposed of routinely.
What kind of preparations are being put into effect to make sure that nothing hazardous either goes up a smokestack or goes overboard?
Well, the U.S. has a very, very long track record of destroying chemical weapons. These are very well-trained technicians that are going on board the ship. And the process involves, say, mixing hot water with these chemicals and others to neutralize. So what's left is certainly toxic waste that is toxic, but not that cannot be used for weapons at this point. The waste is then stored on tanks, inside tanks aboard that ship. These are specially made tanks that are made to store toxic waste, and then will be delivered as other toxic waste is to processing facilities on land.
You were aboard the Cape Ray. It sounds like this is a lot of equipment. Is there enough room on board for all this?
Well, this is a pretty huge ship. It's 750 feet, normally used to transport everything from vehicles to humanitarian supplies. This ship saw duty in places like Haiti after the earthquake. So it's a very large vessel. The tent where the 2 hydrolysis machines, those are the pieces of equipment that will actually neutralize the chemical weapons, are about the size of a small van, I would say. I would compare them to. And then, of course, the tanks where the chemicals are stored are pretty large. They seem to not take up the entire space of the cargo ship.
Still, in the end, it seems like a large portion of this ship, at least during the process, is basically going to be a chemical hot zone.
Absolutely. The technology that is used on land at various facilities around the United States where the chemical weapons have been neutralized is simply being put on board the ship. As far as exhaust systems, they're being transferred the way you would see it on a facility on land, exactly the same setup on the ship.
All right, and again, that was Pentagon correspondent Luis Ramirez. 700 metric tons of chemical weapons and ingredients. That is the amount of toxic material that Luis says the Cape Ray will be prepared to neutralize.